The galaxy was vast, teeming with countless civilizations, each vying for power, survival, or dominance. It was a universe where alliances were forged and shattered, where mercy was often a fleeting luxury, and where the weak were left behind. On the distant edge of a spiraling star cluster, a small, fragile alien race once celebrated for their art. Their innovation and their peaceful ways now faced extinction. They were the Niru, a race of delicate beings with translucent skin that shimmered faintly under starlight, their voices like whispers of wind. Once valued members of the galactic Concord, they had been abandoned in the wake of a devastating war. The Niru were not warriors. They had no weapons, no defenses, no cunning strategies. Their greatest sin, if it could be called one, was their unwavering trust in the Concord's promise of unity. When the war began, they had opened their doors to fleeing refugees, shared their dwindling resources, and offered sanctuary to those in need. But as the fighting escalated and resources grew scarce, the Niru's allies turned their backs. They were deemed too fragile to waste resources on, too naive to survive. One by one, their trade partners cut ties, their protectors withdrew fleets, and their neighbors claimed what little was left of their worlds. The Niru were left to fend for themselves, an impossible task for a species that had always relied on diplomacy and cooperation. Their cries for help echoed through the galactic channels, unanswered. Starved, defenseless, and hunted by opportunistic raiders, they faced annihilation. The Concord turned a blind eye. Their pleas were met with cold pragmatism. In a universe ruled by survival of the fittest, the Niru had no place. It was not cruelty, they said, but necessity. Resources were scarce, and only the strong could endure. But while the galaxy looked away, another species heard the Niru's calls, a species that had long been viewed with suspicion, even fear. The humans. They were a relatively new presence in the galaxy, their rise meteoric and unsettling to the more established civilizations. Humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered. They were adaptable, fierce, and, most of all, carnivorous. The older species often whispered about humanity's violent history, their predatory instincts, their relentless hunger. To many, humans were little more than savages with advanced technology, a force to be watched but not trusted. And yet, it was these so-called savages who responded when no one else would. The human ship Resolute arrived in Niru space, its dark, angular hull cutting through the void like a predator stalking its prey. The Niru had been wary at first, their few remaining leaders hesitant to place their fate in the hands of such a fearsome species. But the humans had come not as conquerors, but as saviors. They brought food, medicine, and engineers who worked tirelessly to restore the Niru's crumbling infrastructure. The humans' presence was not without controversy. Across the galaxy, news spread quickly of their intervention. The Niru were seen as a lost cause, a waste of resources that could have been used elsewhere. Rumors swirled, painting humanity's actions as self-serving. Perhaps they sought to exploit the Niru, to turn their remaining worlds into outposts or factories. Some even suggested the humans saw the Niru as a convenient food source, feeding dark tales of humanity's carnivorous nature. But the humans ignored the whispers. They focused instead on their mission, to save a race everyone else had abandoned. The crew of the Resolute worked day and night, repairing atmospheric generators, building defenses, and teaching the Niru basic survival skills. The Niru were gentle and kind, their gratitude evident in every interaction. They marveled at humanity's strength, their resilience, their ability to endure even in the face of overwhelming odds. And as they learned more about their saviors, they began to understand the truth behind humanity's reputation. Humans were predators, yes, but they were also protectors. They valued loyalty and community, traits born from their ancient hunter-gatherer societies. To them, the Niru's plight was not an opportunity, but an injustice. And in their own way, the humans were just as fragile as the Niru. They carried the weight of their own violent history, the scars of wars fought and lives lost. Perhaps that was why they had answered the call, because they knew what it was like to stand on the edge of extinction. But not everyone welcomed humanity's involvement. As the Niru began to rebuild, the raiders who had preyed upon them grew bolder. They saw the humans as a challenge, a test of strength. One by one, their ships appeared on the edges of Niru space, probing the humans' defenses. The Resolute was powerful, but it was outnumbered, and reinforcements were far away. The humans knew it was only a matter of time before the raiders launched a full-scale assault. The crew debated their options. Some argued that they should call for help. Others believed they could hold the line, that their technology and strategy would be enough to fend off the raiders. The veteran captain of the Resolute listened to every argument, weighing the risks and rewards. But deep down, they knew the truth. The galaxy had abandoned the Niru, and no one would come to their aid. It was up to humanity to stand their ground. As the raiders gathered for their attack, the Niru watched in fear, their fragile hope beginning to waver. They had seen their protectors abandon them before. Would the humans do the same? But the humans did not falter. They fortified their positions, rallied their crew, and prepared for the battle to come. The veterans stood on the bridge of the Resolute, their gaze fixed on the incoming fleet. The Niru's survival depended on their ability to hold the line, to show the galaxy that even the weakest among them deserved a chance to live. But as the raiders' ships loomed closer, another question lingered in the air, a question that would define not only the Niru's fate, but humanity's place in the galaxy. Would humanity's defiance inspire others to stand with them? Or would their actions paint them as the predators the galaxy feared, driving them further into isolation? As the first shots were fired, the answer remained unclear, the outcome uncertain. The humans had chosen to stand alone, but in doing so, they had become something greater, a force of hope for those who had none. The raiders' fleet hung ominously on the edges of the Niru system, a predatory constellation of mismatched ships bristling with weapons. They were pirates, scavengers who thrived on desperation and fear, and they had grown accustomed to easy victories. The Niru had never been a threat, and even with the humans now standing guard, the raiders remained confident. To them, the humans were little more than another obstacle, a challenge to crush, a story to brag about in the shadowy corners of the galaxy. On the Resolute, tension was thick in the air. Every member of the crew was on high alert, their eyes darting between their consoles and the slowly advancing fleet. The captain, standing at the center of the bridge, radiated calm authority, but those who knew them well could see the subtle signs of strain, the tightened jaw, the deliberate stillness of their hands. They had faced battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just a skirmish over territory or resources. This was about protecting a people who had no one else to defend them. The Niru, though grateful, were visibly terrified. In their shelters and makeshift homes, they gathered in hushed groups, their shimmering eyes wide with worry. They were not a species accustomed to violence, and the thought of what might come if the humans failed was unbearable. Yet, despite their fear, a few of them found the courage to venture toward the human outposts scattered across their world. They brought what little they could offer, small tokens of thanks, intricate artworks crafted from their remaining materials, and heartfelt words that, while barely understood, carried a universal message of gratitude. For the human crew, these gestures were humbling. They were used to being seen as invaders or aggressors, even when their intentions were noble. To be treated with such kindness, despite the Nero's precarious situation, only strengthened their resolve. As one soldier put it, "We've got to make sure they get the chance to rebuild. They deserve better than this." As preparations continued, the captain gathered their senior officers for a final briefing. The plan was simple, but risky. The Resolute would take a defensive position near the Nero's largest settlement, using its advanced weaponry and shields to protect the vulnerable population. Meanwhile, a smaller team would lead a stealth operation to disrupt the raiders' fleet from within. It was a strategy born of necessity. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, and they needed every advantage they could muster. Among the volunteers for the stealth mission was the ship's engineer, a pragmatic and resourceful individual who had already earned the Nero's admiration through their tireless efforts to repair the planet's infrastructure. When asked why they had volunteered, the engineer's response was simple: "Because if we don't stop them, everything we've worked for will be lost. I can't let that happen." As the stealth team prepared to depart, the Nero elders approached the captain with a surprising request. They wanted to send one of their own with the humans, a young Nero who had shown remarkable ingenuity and bravery during the rebuilding efforts. The captain hesitated, unsure if it was wise to bring someone so vulnerable into the heart of danger. But the young Nero, speaking through a human translator, insisted, "I need to help. This is my home, my people. Please, let me fight for them." Reluctantly, the captain agreed, and the young Nero joined the team. The tension between the two species, humans and Nero, melted away as they worked side by side, preparing for the mission. Despite their differences, they shared a common goal, and that was enough to forge a bond stronger than fear. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Resolute, the captain monitored the raiders' movements. The enemy fleet was closing in, their ships forming an ominous blockade around the planet. The captain's voice echoed across the ship's comms, steady and unyielding. "This is it, people. Remember what we're fighting for. Hold the line, no matter what." As the battle began, the raiders unleashed a barrage of firepower, their weapons lighting up the void like fireworks. The Resolute responded in kind, its advanced cannons tearing through the darkness with precision. The ship's shields flared under the onslaught, but they held strong, a testament to human engineering and determination. On the planet's surface, the Nero watched in awe and terror as the battle unfolded above them. They had never seen such a display of power, such ferocity. For the first time, they understood why the galaxy feared humans. But they also saw something else: humanity's unwavering commitment to protect them, even at great cost. It was a lesson the Nero would never forget. Meanwhile, the stealth team infiltrated the raiders' flagship, moving through its dark, labyrinthine corridors with practiced efficiency. The young Nero proved invaluable, using their intimate knowledge of their people's technology, some of which had been scavenged by the raiders, to disable key systems. Despite their fear, they moved with determination, inspired by the humans' courage. As the team approached the flagship's command center, the raiders became aware of their presence. Alarms blared, and the corridors filled with enemy combatants. A fierce firefight ensued, the humans' advanced weaponry giving them a critical edge. The young Nero, though unarmed, played a vital role, guiding the team through hidden passages and helping them avoid ambushes. Back on the Resolute, the battle in space reached a fever pitch. The raiders, realizing their flagship was under attack, began to falter. Their formations broke, and their firepower grew erratic. The captain seized the opportunity, ordering a decisive strike that disabled several enemy vessels. But victory was far from assured. The Resolute was heavily damaged, and its crew was running out of options. On the flagship, the stealth team finally reached the command center. With the young Nero's help, they disabled the ship's primary systems, leaving it vulnerable to attack. As they prepared to retreat, the team leader turned to the young Nero, their voice filled with admiration. "You were incredible. We couldn't have done this without you." The young Nero's shimmering eyes filled with determination. "We're not done yet. My people still need us." As the team made their escape, the flagship's systems began to fail, triggering a chain reaction that spread through the raiders' fleet. The Resolute, battered but unbroken, delivered a final blow that sent the remaining ships into retreat. The battle was over, but the cost had been high. The Resolute limped back to the planet, its crew exhausted but triumphant. As the humans and Nero celebrated their hard-won victory, a sense of unease lingered. The raiders had been defeated, but the galaxy would not forget what had happened here. Questions remained unanswered. Why had the humans risked so much for a species no one else cared about? And what would the Concord think of their actions? For now, those questions could wait. In the aftermath of the battle, humans and Nero stood together, united by their shared struggle and their newfound hope. But in the shadows of the galaxy, new challenges loomed, and the true test of their alliance was yet to come. The aftermath of the battle left an uneasy calm over the Nero homeworld. Though the raiders had retreated, their presence had not been erased entirely. Scattered remnants of their fleet remained hidden among the asteroid belts, biding their time, and their escape had left a haunting question. Would they return with reinforcements? The Nero's fragile hope was beginning to waver again, despite the victory. For the humans aboard the Resolute, the victory had been a costly one. The ship's systems were strained, and repairs were slow. Supplies were running low, and the crew was growing restless, knowing that their position had made them a target. The young Nero, who had played a pivotal role in the stealth mission, was now viewed as a beacon of courage among their people. Their presence inspired others to step forward, eager to help in any way they could. Engineers worked alongside the humans, learning how to build defenses and repair damaged technology. Farmers shared what little food they had with the human soldiers, even as rations dwindled. A sense of camaraderie began to grow between the two species, though the shadow of what lay ahead loomed ever larger. The captain of the Resolute watched this fragile bond forming with quiet admiration. Humanity had rarely been trusted by other species, and now, here, on this forgotten world, they were forging a connection that could change perceptions across the galaxy. But there was no time to celebrate. Reports from scouts confirmed the worst. The raiders were regrouping, and this time they weren't coming alone. Several nearby systems controlled by mercenaries and opportunists had responded to the raiders' call for vengeance. A massive fleet was forming, and it was only a matter of days before they arrived. The news hit hard. The Nero were devastated, their newfound hope threatening to crumble under the weight of this new threat. Even among the human crew, there were murmurs of doubt. They were outnumbered, their ship barely functional, and the galaxy at large remained indifferent. Help would not come. The captain gathered their senior officers and key Niru leaders for a tense meeting. The situation was dire, and the choices were few. The captain spoke bluntly, their voice heavy with the weight of leadership. "We can't run. We can't hide. If we leave, the Niru will be slaughtered. If we stay, we may not survive. But if we fight, if we stand together, we can make them think twice before they attack us again." The room fell silent. The Niru leaders exchanged nervous glances, their translucent skin faintly glowing as they absorbed the captain's words. It was the young Niru who broke the silence, their voice steady despite the fear that lingered in their wide, shimmering eyes. "We will fight. We don't know how, but we will stand with you. Teach us. Show us how to defend our home." The captain nodded, a flicker of respect in their usually stoic expression. It was decided. The humans and Niru would prepare for the fight of their lives. Every able-bodied individual was put to work, whether learning to operate salvaged weapons, reinforcing defenses, or monitoring the skies for signs of the approaching fleet. The atmosphere on the planet shifted as determination replaced despair. Even the youngest and oldest Niru found ways to contribute, creating supplies or organizing shelters for those who couldn't fight. The human crew worked tirelessly, their expertise and resourcefulness shining through. The engineer who had led the stealth team took charge of fortifying the planet's defenses, devising traps and automated turrets from scrap materials. Soldiers trained the Niru in basic combat techniques, adapting their methods to account for the aliens' delicate physiques. It wasn't much, but it was something a chance to resist, however slim. As the days passed, tension continued to build. The Niru's newfound resolve was tested as rumors of the raiders' growing fleet spread among the population. The humans, too, felt the strain. They were warriors, but they were also human flesh and blood, vulnerable to fear and exhaustion. The weight of their responsibility pressed heavily on their shoulders. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that the galaxy's assumptions about them were wrong. When the scouts finally reported that the raiders' fleet was on the move, a chill ran through the camp. The final hours before the battle were a blur of activity and quiet moments of reflection. The Niru gathered in small groups, whispering prayers and words of encouragement to one another. Among the humans, there was no room for hesitation. Every weapon was checked and rechecked, every strategy reviewed until it was burned into their minds. The captain moved among the crew, offering words of encouragement and calm. They had no room for doubt now. The enemy was coming, and they would meet them head-on. The young Niru stood with the human engineer, their hands trembling slightly as they adjusted the settings on a makeshift turret. The engineer noticed and placed a reassuring hand on their shoulder. "You're doing great," they said softly. "You've already proven you're stronger than you think. Just focus on what's in front of you. We'll get through this." The first wave of raider ships appeared on the horizon, their silhouettes cutting through the planet's thin atmosphere like blades. The sky darkened as more ships followed, casting an ominous shadow over the land. The Resolute, battered but functional, hovered above the largest settlement, its weapon systems trained on the approaching fleet. On the ground, human soldiers and Niru fighters took their positions, hearts pounding as they awaited the inevitable. The raiders wasted no time, unleashing a devastating barrage of firepower that lit up the sky. The humans responded with precision, their weapons targeting key ships and disrupting the enemy's formation. Explosions tore through the air, shaking the ground and sending shockwaves through the Niru's fragile shelters. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Despite their initial success, the humans quickly found themselves overwhelmed. The raiders' numbers were greater than expected, their tactics more ruthless. The Resolute was taking heavy fire, its shields flickering as they struggled to hold. On the ground, the combined forces of humans and Niru fought valiantly, but they were being pushed back. The young Niru, stationed near the front lines, watched in horror as the defenses they had worked so hard to build began to crumble. In the midst of the chaos, the captain's voice came over the comms, steady and unyielding. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. Stay focused. Protect the Niru. Hold the line." The words galvanized the fighters, renewing their determination. But even as they fought with everything they had, it was clear the odds were against them. As the battle raged on, a sudden explosion rocked the sky, drawing everyone's attention. A massive raider ship had descended, its sheer size dwarfing even the Resolute. The flagship had arrived, and with it came the full force of the raiders' might. The captain's heart sank as they realized the truth. This was the moment they had feared, the moment when everything would be decided. The arrival of the massive raider flagship was like a thunderclap through the battlefield. Its looming presence cast a shadow so vast it seemed to blot out the very hope the defenders clung to. The ship's weapons flared with deadly precision, sending bursts of energy streaking toward the Resolute. The human vessel reeled under the assault, its shields faltering with every impact. On the ground, the fighters looked to the skies in a mixture of awe and dread. If the flagship wasn't stopped, everything they'd fought for would be lost. The captain barked orders through the comms, rallying the crew. "Focus fire on the flagship. Draw its attention away from the planet." The Resolute's cannons roared to life, their shots slamming into the raider ship's shields. But the flagship was no ordinary vessel. It absorbed the attacks with minimal damage, its counter-assault relentless. The captain knew they were running out of time. On the surface, the young Niru stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the colossal ship. The human engineer beside them nudged their shoulder. "Snap out of it. We've got work to do." But before the young Niru could respond, a new sound echoed through the air, a low, mournful hum that seemed to vibrate deep in the bones. It was coming from the planet itself. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and a series of luminous patterns appeared, spreading out from the ruins like veins of light. The Niru stared in shock, their bioluminescent skin pulsing in rhythm with the glow. It was as if the planet were waking up, responding to the chaos around it. The young Niru whispered in awe, "It's the heart of our world. It's alive." The humans exchanged confused looks, but there was no time to analyze the phenomenon. The ground shook violently, and a beam of light shot skyward from the center of the ruins, striking the raider flagship with such force that its shields flickered and buckled. The sudden assault caught everyone off guard. On the Resolute, the crew watched in astonishment as the flagship staggered under the unexpected blow. The captain, seizing the opportunity, ordered the ship to redirect all power to its weapons. The Niru elders hurriedly gathered near the ruins, speaking in frantic tones. They explained that the patterns and energy were remnants of an ancient defense system, long dormant and forgotten. "We never thought it could still function," one of them said, their voice trembling. "But it seems to be responding to us, and to the humans." The young Niru, still staring at the glowing patterns, turned to the human engineer. "What if we can guide it? What if this is how we fight back?" The engineer hesitated. "You're saying this thing can be controlled by us? How?" The Niru didn't have an answer, but their conviction was unwavering. Together with the humans, They began examining the ruins, searching for a way to channel the newfound energy. The air around them buzzed with tension and urgency as the battle raged on above. The raider fleet, emboldened by the flagship's arrival, was pressing the attack, and the Resolute was barely holding its own. As the defenders worked frantically, a new message came through the comms, a distress signal. It wasn't from the raiders, but from another human ship. The transmission crackled with static, but the message was clear. A small fleet of rogue human mercenaries, known for their brutal tactics, was heading toward the Niru system. They had picked up on the battle and were coming not to help, but to claim the planet for themselves. The captain's face hardened as they listened. The mercenaries were notorious, their loyalty bought only by the highest bidder. If they arrived, the fragile alliance between the humans and Niru would shatter under the weight of yet another enemy. The news spread quickly among the defenders, and panic began to set in. The young Niru, sensing the growing despair, stepped forward. "We can't give up now," they said, their voice firm. "This planet has protected us for generations. Now it's our turn to protect it." Their words reignited a spark of hope, and the humans and Niru doubled their efforts, determined to find a way to harness the ancient defense system. As the rogue mercenary fleet drew closer, the captain made a difficult decision. They sent a small, heavily armed shuttle to intercept the mercenaries, hoping to buy time. The crew aboard the shuttle knew it was a suicide mission, but they volunteered without hesitation. "If it keeps them off the Niru's backs for even a few minutes," one soldier said grimly, "it'll be worth it." Back on the surface, the team working on the ruins made a breakthrough. The young Niru discovered a central console buried beneath the rubble, its alien symbols glowing faintly. With the human engineers' help, they began deciphering the controls. The system was ancient and unstable, but it responded to their touch, pulsing with raw energy. The elder Niru watched in awe as the patterns of light grew brighter, spreading across the landscape like a living network. Above them, the flagship unleashed a devastating barrage, its weapons tearing through the Resolute's weakened shields. The human ship was on the brink of collapse, and the captain knew they had only moments left. They activated the ship's emergency comms, sending one final message to the surface. "Whatever you're doing down there, do it now. This is your chance." The young Niru and the engineer exchanged a determined look. "We're ready," the Niru said, their hands hovering over the console. But just as they prepared to activate the system, the ground split open with a deafening crack, and a massive mechanical structure began to rise from beneath the ruins. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, part machine, part organic, its surface shimmering with the same bioluminescent glow as the Niru themselves. The captain's voice crackled through the comms again, filled with both awe and urgency. "Whatever that thing is, use it. It's our last hope." But even as the structure rose, the flagship's weapons locked onto it, preparing to obliterate this new threat before it could strike. The defenders braced themselves, the tension so thick it seemed to freeze time. The towering structure hummed with life, its glowing patterns pulsing faster and brighter as the Niru and the humans scrambled to activate it fully. The flagship above unleashed a storm of firepower, the ground quaking as each shot landed closer and closer to the ruins. The captain of the Resolute, battered but resolute, shouted over the comms for all remaining weapons to focus on the flagship, hoping to buy the defenders below just a few more seconds. The Resolute's cannons lit up the sky, their final salvo striking the flagship with enough force to make it stagger. On the ground, the young Niru's hands trembled as they pressed a series of glowing symbols on the ancient console. The human engineer beside them called out readings, their voice sharp with urgency. "Whatever this thing is, it's building up power fast. We've got one shot at this, so make it count." The Niru took a deep breath, their gaze steady as they pressed the final symbol. The structure shuddered, then released an ear-splitting resonance that rippled across the battlefield. A massive beam of light erupted from its core, slicing through the atmosphere and striking the flagship with precision. The flagship's shields buckled, then shattered under the immense force. The beam pierced its hull, tearing through the massive ship as if it were paper. Explosions rippled across its surface, sending debris raining down onto the battlefield below. For a moment, it seemed the defenders had won. Cheers erupted from the ground as the raider fleet hesitated, their formation breaking apart in confusion. The captain of the Resolute managed a weary smile, their voice cracking through the comms. "Good work, everyone. We're not out of this yet, but we've—" The captain's words were cut off as the ground beneath the ancient structure began to quake violently. The glowing patterns that had spread across the ruins now pulsed erratically, their light growing blindingly bright. The young Niru and the engineer stumbled back from the console, shielding their eyes. "What's happening?" the engineer shouted over the deafening hum. One of the Niru elders, their voice filled with both awe and dread, answered. "The system. It wasn't just a weapon. It was part of the planet itself. We've awakened something far older and more powerful than we could have imagined." Before anyone could react, the ground erupted, and a colossal form began to rise from beneath the ruins. It was a living construct, a fusion of technology and organic matter, its surface shimmering with the same bioluminescent patterns as the Niru. It towered above the battlefield, its immense size dwarfing even the flagship that now lay in ruin. The raider fleet, already in disarray, panicked at the sight of the massive entity. Ships veered off course, colliding with one another in their haste to retreat. The construct let out a low, resonant sound that reverberated across the battlefield, shaking the very air. Its presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The young Nero stared up at the being, their voice barely a whisper. "It's alive. It's the heart of our world." The captain's voice crackled through the comms, filled with both awe and urgency. "Whatever that thing is, we need to make sure it's on our side. Get out of there now." But before they could retreat, the construct began to move. It extended a massive arm toward the retreating raider fleet, releasing another beam of light that disintegrated several ships in an instant. The remaining raiders fled, scattering into the depths of space. For a moment, it seemed the battle was truly over. The Niru and the humans watched in stunned silence as the construct turned its gaze toward the planet below. The young Niru felt a deep, resonant connection with the being, as if it were reaching out to them. They stepped forward, their bioluminescent skin glowing in harmony with the construct's patterns. "It's trying to communicate," they said, their voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It knows we're its people. It's asking us what comes next." The human engineer looked at them, disbelief written across their face. "You can understand it? What is it asking for?" The Niru hesitated, then turned to the gathered humans and Niru. "It's asking if we're ready to protect ourselves, if we're ready to stand on our own." The construct's glow began to fade, its immense form slowly sinking back into the ruins. It wasn't retreating, but resting, its power depleted after millennia of dormancy. The young Niru stepped forward, their voice steady as they addressed the gathered defenders. "We've been given a second chance. A chance to rebuild, to become stronger, and to honor the sacrifices made here today. We can't rely on ancient powers or the kindness of strangers forever. This is our world, and it's our responsibility to protect it." The humans watched in quiet admiration as the Niru began to organize themselves, their despair replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. The captain of the Resolute, their ship barely holding together, spoke over the comms one last time. "We'll stay as long as we can to help you rebuild. But after that, this is your fight. Make it count." As the humans and Niru worked together to repair the damage and prepare for an uncertain future, the rogue mercenary fleet finally arrived. But instead of attacking, they hovered at the edge of the system, watching. It seemed even they weren't willing to challenge the raw power of the Niru's ancient guardian. The captain of the Resolute sent a single message to the mercenaries: "Turn back now. This planet is under our protection." The mercenaries hesitated, then retreated, their ships disappearing into the void. For the first time in generations, the Niru felt a glimmer of hope, not because of the humans or the ancient construct, but because they had found the strength to fight for themselves. As the humans prepared to depart, leaving behind a legacy of resilience and camaraderie, the young Niru watched them go, a quiet determination in their gaze. Their people would not be helpless again. They had seen what courage, sacrifice, and unity could achieve, and they would carry that lesson forward. Above them, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if the galaxy itself had taken notice. As the dust settled and the last remnants of the raider fleet disappeared into the depths of space, the Niru and humans found themselves standing at the edge of a new beginning. The ancient construct, now dormant once again, rested like a silent guardian within the ruins, its luminous patterns fading into subtle glimmers that pulsed gently in the soil. The air was heavy with the weight of what had transpired, but also with the unspoken understanding that something profound had changed, not just for the Niru, but for everyone who had fought to protect them. On the surface, the young Niru walked among their people, their glowing skin reflecting the soft light of the ruins. The battle had left scars on the land, deep gouges in the earth where weapons had struck and fires had raged. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was hope. The humans worked side by side with the Niru, clearing rubble, repairing what could be salvaged, and setting the groundwork for a future that neither species could have imagined just days before. The connection forged through shared struggle was undeniable, a bond that spoke louder than any words could. The captain of the Resolute, leaning against a temporary command console, observed the scene with a mixture of pride and weariness. Their ship was barely functional, held together with emergency repairs and sheer determination. Yet, the captain knew they had accomplished something far greater than survival. They had stood for something, and in doing so, had changed the trajectory of two species. The Niru elder approached, their glowing patterns dim but steady. "We owe you much," the elder said quietly. "But this is just the beginning, isn't it?" The captain nodded. "It always is. The hard part is ahead. Rebuilding, learning to trust again, and making sure this place is ready for the next challenge." They glanced up at the ancient construct. "And figuring out what that thing is?" "Exactly." The elder's expression turned thoughtful. "It's more than a weapon. It's a reminder of who we were and who we can be. But we can't depend on it. Not forever." Nearby, the young Niru and the human engineer were deep in conversation, poring over schematics of the ruins and the surrounding infrastructure. The discovery of the ancient construct had revealed other technologies buried beneath the surface systems that could stabilize the planet's environment, enhance agriculture, and provide sustainable energy. It was clear that the Niru's ancestors had been far more advanced than anyone had realized, their legacy hidden beneath centuries of neglect and decay. "We could use this to jumpstart everything," the engineer said, their voice tinged with excitement. "With the right systems in place, this planet could not only survive, but thrive. You wouldn't have to rely on anyone else, not even us." The young Niru tilted their head, considering the implications. "But we'll still need guidance. Your knowledge is vast. We've learned so much from working together. I don't want that to end." The engineer smiled. "Then it doesn't have to. Partnerships don't have to be about dependence. They can be about sharing strength." Over the next few weeks, the humans and Niru worked tirelessly to rebuild. The ruins became a hub of activity, a mix of ancient technology and modern ingenuity. The Niru began to take charge of their future, learning to operate the systems that had once been beyond their understanding. The humans, true to their promise, stayed just long enough to ensure the Niru could stand on their own. Supplies were shared, knowledge exchanged, and friendships formed in the fires of necessity. The rogue mercenary fleet, though driven away for the moment, remained a looming threat. The captain of the Resolute knew it was only a matter of time before someone else tried to claim the planet. To that end, the humans helped establish a planetary defense system, integrating Niru technology with their own. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, one that would buy the Niru time to strengthen their position. As the Resolute prepared for its departure, a quiet ceremony was held. The Niru gathered in the ruins, their bioluminescent patterns creating a soft, ethereal glow in the twilight. The young Niru stepped forward, addressing both their people and the humans who had fought alongside them. "Today, we begin a new chapter. We are no longer a helpless race, waiting for salvation or suffering under the weight of our past. We are builders, protectors, and friends. To those who stood with us, who shared our struggle and our hope, we offer our deepest gratitude. You have not only saved our lives, but given us a future." The human captain, unaccustomed to such sentimentality, simply nodded. "You're tougher than you give yourselves credit for. But remember, strength isn't just about weapons or technology. It's about what you do with them. And I think you'll do just fine." The Niru elder stepped forward, presenting the captain with a small, intricately carved object. It was a piece of the ruins, etched with the same glowing patterns that adorned the ancient construct. "A reminder," the elder said, "of what we've shared, and of the responsibility we all carry." The captain accepted the gift, their expression unreadable but touched. "We'll keep it safe." As the Resolute lifted off, leaving the Niru to their newfound independence, the crew reflected on the journey. The human engineer, watching the planet recede through the viewport, spoke softly. "We didn't just save them. They saved us too. Reminded us what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves." The captain, seated nearby, gave a faint smile. "That's the thing about these kinds of battles. They leave marks on everyone." For the Niru, the days that followed were filled with challenges. Rebuilding wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and fear. But each time they faltered, they remembered the battle, the sacrifices, and the resilience that had carried them through. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were a people with purpose, united by a shared determination to protect their world and their legacy. The ancient construct remained silent, its immense form a constant presence in the ruins. Some Niru believed it was watching over them, a guardian waiting for the moment it would be needed again. Others saw it as a symbol of their past, a reminder of the mistakes and triumphs that had shaped their history. Whatever it was, it stood as a testament to the enduring spirit of the Niru and the humans who had chosen to stand beside them. Far away, in the vast expanse of the galaxy, whispers of the battle spread. The story of the Niru and their unlikely allies reached distant worlds, inspiring hope in some and fear in others. The message was clear: even the smallest and most overlooked among us can rise, given the chance. And in their rise, they can reshape the stars themselves. For both the Niru and the humans, the journey was far from over. But for now, there was peace. And in that peace, the promise of a brighter future.